I was away for a couple of days for the first time in over a year. It was such a good opportunity to be on the road, and it felt so good. It also gave me a chance to catch up on no less than 8 books in one 2-hour drive. And that's because I was using this incredible app called Blinkist. It's hard to find the time to sit down and read and learn more. So when you don't have that free time, you can't read or work on your personal development. That's really annoying. Blinkist is really unique, and it works on your phone, your tablet, or your web browser. Blinkist takes the best key takeaways, the need-to-know information from thousands of nonfiction books and condenses them down to just 15 minutes each that you can read or listen to. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/reach. Try it free for 7 days and save 25% off your new subscription. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist. Blinkist.com/reach to start your free 7-day trial. And you'll also save 25% off, but only when you go and sign up right now at Blinkist.com/reach. Everybody, welcome to Friday night's after show. It's Friday. It's finally here. These are 2 of my favorite people in the entire world. Greg Olear is here from Prevail, and Lincoln's Bible is here. How are you, LB?
I'm good.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, I'm happy it's Friday. I'm so happy we're here. It is now my marker to just make it to narrative, and then I'm like, yay.
I started the day with one set of news stories. We're ending with a completely different set of news stories because so much has happened today. If you felt the earth move today, by the way, it actually did shake. There's a volcano in the Grenadines, which erupted for the first time since 1979. The plume of smoke and ash is kind of amazing, and lots of people are being evacuated, but it did actually shake. It was a world-moving event. The other big news was Prince Philip passing away. Yeah. And that's really sad. He's been around a while, 99 years, so maybe you could say he had a good, as they say in cricket, a good innings. But on the other hand, he's a controversial guy. And makes me wonder about whether Prince Charles will be the one who takes over, whether they'll skip over to William. LB, what do you think about what's going on with Prince Philip and he's the dearly departed?
He lived a long time. He had a royal life, right? And he was a royal. He came in as a royal, and he went out as a royal, and that's a very specific thing. And I am not a monarchist. I am not. So I have a hard time. I think it's just like a family story right now. We could talk about this guy, but I don't know. I don't like his sisters married all those Nazis. I never liked this guy. I got to be honest. He was quiet and in the background as far as anybody could tell. But I'm an American. I'm not into these monarchs. We got rid of them. Goodbye. I have a lot of issues, but I want to hear what Greg has to say because he's got a lot to say.
I was surprised that my kids knew who he was. They both knew. I have a freshman and a sophomore, 16 and 14, and they both were acutely aware not only of who Prince Philip was, but that he existed and that he had died. And I thought that was weird. And apparently there was a lot of fun being made at his expense over the last year or so on TikTok because he looked so much like a member of the undead that the kids were actively making fun of him. And now, they can't do that anymore. So this is what I learned today is that I don't think it's technically a meme because TikTok isn't memeing, but it was a thing that all the kids...
This is a portrait they just did of him recently where he looks quite good. In some of these other pictures towards his death there, he was looking like he was very, very close to death. I thought he might have died sooner. And, the whole thing with Prince Harry and Meghan, I think this was a hard year. I use that term, Annus Horribilis, that she used before, the Queen used before. And I think she's had another Annus Horribilis this year. So, I do have sympathy for her. I do. And she's had to deal with the whole thing of COVID and her nation dying and all of that, and Brexit. Those are terrible things to have to deal with, I imagine. But there's something about this royal family which just makes you wonder, why can't they be human? Why can't they be in any way like the rest of us? I covered the Princess Diana funeral and the death of Princess Diana, which was a huge story, and about the first time I ever thought of these guys having any sort of soul or any sort of heart. Because you actually, you go to London, everyone's very nice, very jolly, very particular, but they very rarely are expressing emotions in the way that the rest of the world does. And she made them feel for the first time. Princess Diana made them feel. There were literally people wandering in the streets, crying. There was people carrying flowers by the bucket loads to the various palaces and leaving them there. And, there was a real sense of mourning for the first time in the UK. Because before then and since then, I've never felt that they've been very good at that, Clearly, the future king is a racist. When he asked that question about Meghan Markle's baby, he said, what color is it going to be? This guy's a racist. He clearly is that. And they're going out saying, oh, we're not racist. But of course they're racist. Of course they are. The royal family has always been racist. They, for a while there were sort of Nazi supporters. There's a whole history there which makes you wonder about who they are and what they really are doing. And that whether they're very human. And a lot of the time I think that they're sort of not very human.
The Diana thing you mentioned, I think it was in early 96 because I was living in Hoboken and I had a subscription to the New York Times, and I went and got the paper and put the paper on my table, and the headline was on the Times. And that's how I found out the news, which was how long ago it was that I actually discovered this from seeing the headline in a paper. Like in an old movie or some movie, guys walking down the street and, oh my God, I have to see the headline in the paper. It's the only time in my life that ever actually happened. Yeah.
Those are the good old days when you actually had to go and report the news. You had to go somewhere to report the news. I was working for the big network morning show here in Canada, and my boss wouldn't send me. I was furious. He was like, "You've got to send me. You've got to send me." Finally, like 6 hours later, I convinced him to let me go. So I, flew overnight to London, and then we did the morning show the next day out of London, and it was a good decision because then we realized what a dramatic impact she'd had on the world and particularly on the British people. And it seems that they, at the moment, probably changed royal history forever. For me, at least, the royal family has not been the same since. I think they've been dealing with the challenges that she brought to them in terms of what kind of people they were ever since. And we're seeing it in Harry and in William today.
Diana felt like that death felt like it felt like she just got consumed to death, right? It was just like, losing John Lennon or something. It was the fame that took her and what she stood for that threatened everybody around her. And then she kept going, so it was just this big, bright thing, her existence. And then it was like, it couldn't keep going. It just,
she stood for love and she stood for having a heart and compassion.
But that was secondary to the mission of the family that she was in. And so that there was the conflict, right? And I think there's something even underneath all of that so Philip's very different. This man was born a royal. He's a Greek royal. He lived his whole life as a royal. He insisted on a royal title to marry her, the queen, and he's he knew how to do that job. He was born to do that job, right? And he lived in 99. My God, I hope I lived in 99. And he was driving a car just until a couple of years ago. So, the guy, he did it. He made it. Good on you, dude. So it's not like this tragedy, in terms of like, oh my God, somebody just got, stolen from existence. I'm so bothered and disturbed by, these dependencies that still exist, these Queen's dependencies, these regions that are part of that crown, but have a, answer to it. She does still have the power there. And then you have things like Harry and Meghan saying, well, it's not the Queen. Right? And this whole line, it's not the Queen. She's lovely. She doesn't have anything to do with the real power. It's the real power that oppressed us. It's like, is she the Queen or not?
Power? Yeah.
Is she the Queen or not? She's the Queen. Everybody works for her in that structure of that monarchy. There's no like subgroup over here.
She's in charge by design.
That's somehow not subject to her power. So the whole narrative around all this is starting to just kind of, for me, it's just crumbling in a way that, it was always horseshit. I'm Irish, though. I like that Irish treat. That guy that said out. It's like, has everybody finally realized that they're living next door to a bunch of clowns? Except, they killed your grandpa. If you're Irish, they kill you. So it's just different for me.
It's different. I think Americans have a very big fascination with the royal family. They always have. They love the idea of royalty, but they don't want to be subject to that royalty. And yet somehow there still seems to be a lot of influence amongst these royal families around the world. You would think that now, after all these battles for democracy have happened around the world, that these royal families would be just figureheads. But they're not. When you think about the centuries and centuries of power and wealth that they've accumulated, that power and wealth is still very present in our daily lives. And even the story we've been covering so closely, the Deutsche Bank story around Donald Trump. Deutsche Bank was started by the King of Prussia, now Germany or whatever you want to call it. So that's where that money came from. It came from hundreds and hundreds of years of royal family money. Maybe the royal family or the remnants of the royal family still have an interest in what happens around the world in terms of democracy. Maybe they don't. I suspect they do. And I suspect, that they use these vehicles of power that they've built up, these networks of power, really, that they've built up over centuries to still influence the world. And even though they might seem like they give a nod to democracy, in that they pretend that they've got democratic countries. In those countries, including this one, Canada, where I live in right now, and the UK, you've got politics is sort of sitting on top of these networks. There's these old school networks that sit around, that have been around forever. Big family monies, the royal family, you name it, they've been around forever. The churches, or all the religions, they all have like these long, deep networks, and then they're the basis for everything. On top of that, they throw politics. And the politics sort of slides on top of that. But they have the power, ultimately. And I think, the United States was the first time that I can think of where that was really challenged. And they were like, we're going to do it our own. We're going to do it our own, where we're not going to have this aristocracy. We're not going to have the royal family. No one's going to tell us what to do. But that leaves America as, pretty isolated in the world, because I think it's the only country in the world that really doesn't have all those institutions. And even though we've appeared to be on an equal standing with everybody, maybe it hasn't been so equal after all. Maybe along the way, maybe we did upset some people in the royal family or the royal families around the world when we said, you can't keep your laundered money in offshore holdings anymore because we don't think that they're legal. Maybe that upset some people. It probably did. Maybe when Barack Obama decided, let's do the Magnitsky sanctions against Russia, the old Russian royal family, which is still very much in existence, many of them live in the United States, maybe they were a little bit upset about the fact that their money might be commandeered by the American government or frozen by the American government because it's in offshore holdings and is illegally kept there. I mean, all those things are very real possibilities. This is what triggered where we are today. And we have to look at the way the churches are operating and the way the other religions, like Chabad, operates within this weird royal world of the Russians. It's a sect of Jewish religion, but it operates within the royal household of Russia. It's where Putin gets a lot of his ability to network the world is through Chabad. I mean, these are old institutions and networks that really challenge the idea of democracy. And we need to think about how we deal with those, because they're not sort of going away without some pressure, presumably.
And I want LB to talk about this in a second, but before we go to you, I want to say, in the movie Naked Gun, Okay. The plot revolves around the Queen of England visiting Los Angeles, and Frank Drebin of Police Squad is responsible for protecting the Queen while she's in LA. And there's this press conference that they give, and he's sort of scatterbrained, played by Leslie Nielsen, and he comes up at the press conference and says, "As ridiculous as the idea of a queen seems to us, as Americans, we must be considerate and gracious hosts." Right. And that right there perfectly encapsulates my feelings of the Queen of England.
Yeah.
I couldn't, be here all night and I couldn't say it better.
I'll tell a personal story. So my mother-in-law, who's still with us, she has very advanced Alzheimer's, but it's okay. It's just because she's a fabulous, incredible woman, Jewish woman. So I have a Jewish mother-in-law. It came with everything. I got
Jewish
everything.
and Irish. Well, that doesn't explain anything about you.
Oh, it was the best. It was the best, though. And she. I'll share this tiny little bit. So she was actually quite an accomplished musician, classical musician, and married to her husband was just extraordinary man. But because of who he was, they played music all over the world when they were younger. And my mother-in-law, she's very, admittedly, sort of like everyone kind of figured out, she's very heavily on the spectrum too, but has her brilliance in her music. It just is this original character. You cannot imagine a character like my mother-in-law. Amazing. So oh my God, I've always wanted to write her. She's so great. So she literally, when she was like in her 20s, they were playing somewhere. I think it was either Italy or Spain. It was a thing. And there was a queen there. And there was a whole thing where there was little training. This is how you do. This is how they teach you how you have to do for the
how you do the curtsy?
Yeah. And this
can you curtsy, by the way?
Little,
you should do the curtsy.
I have no idea.
Challenge.
I don't know. But and she's like 5 feet. Right. So this tiny and be gorgeous, right? Which she was, in her 20s, still. So tiny little spitball woman with no filter. Right. And she goes, "I don't bow to queens." This queen was right there. "I don't bow to you," she says. And they just she walked along. And everyone's like, okay, she's not bowing. But look at what she proved in that moment. They didn't do anything. What's going to happen? The world did not cave in. They didn't kick her out. Nothing happened. She just refused it. She refused the ridiculousness.
You can refuse it, but then you can't gain access to it. If you want to play their game, you have to play their game. And you have to you have to know how to curtsy, and you have to know how the process works. And if you go to one of those tea parties that the Queen has at Buckingham Palace, it's a big deal. And whether she comes and talks to you is another even bigger deal. And the way that happens is a whole process. It's like a whole ritual that they've developed. And all that ritual keeps them in power and keeps them, it keeps them plentiful, and they're able to keep all these subordinates doing things for them, whether they're, the knights
or the different orders
and
giving something up to get whatever you think they're going to give you. And that's transactional and that's corrupt. I'm sorry.
Well, it could be.
I don't like it.
Could be. I mean, certainly it's a good reason to live in the United States of America.
Okay. So you were talking about the Russia thing. That's an oligarchy. It is this thing of there's a sector of wealth that this power, property, prestige, and we are a democracy. But if you look at our Constitution, it was written by white propertied males for white propertied males. It was about your property. But it was written in such a language that it could evolve to be what it is today. It could evolve to be a true democracy. We're still working hard towards it. Mm-hmm. We really are. But we're still dealing with all those, with that fracture of that origin, even though we threw off the monarchy of, these people who had the power still were the white men that had the property.
Right.
And that's what royals were. They were just land.
I mean, I'm a little concerned that we're going to get King Charles. I mean, I'll say this.
That they're going to skip him. I don't know why you have to skip him.
They have to skip him.
Why would they skip him?
He's just like a cranky old dude from his thinking is prehistoric. He doesn't make a lot of sense. He's a racist. He doesn't reflect the British people anymore, if he ever did. He's got this weird sort of awkward way about him. He's not, he's friends with Donald Trump. I don't know. What else do you need? He's just not my. I mean, I'd much rather see William and Kate try to modernize that throne if they can. At least they seem to have a conscience, and at least they seem to think about the world in a more normal way. At least they drive their own cars. You know, I mean, there's just something more, 21st century about them, where Prince Charles or King Charles would be just awful, just tired. I'm tired of him already, and he's not even the king.
I have no opinion because I really don't give a shit. I don't care which one of them's king. I think none of them should be. And, they did say what you will about Russia. Okay. Yep. And the way that they did it was horrible and barbaric, but they ended the goddamn monarchy in that country.
We think they did. No, apparently they did not.
Did.
Apparently they did not.
The hereditary monarchy is the guy who's supposed to be the Romanov now runs some company in Brussels, but I'm gonna predict boldly on the show. You watching here? I don't think he's ever going to be czar. I'm just going to say it right now. He is not going to be czar. George Romanov. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's going to happen to you. When the Bolsheviks did that, when the Bolsheviks took over and they put their hammer and sickle on the flag where there was always these elaborate crowns and bullshit. That scared the shit out of everybody. It really did. So you had two times. You had America, and we always kind of, we played it both ways here. But the Soviets threw that shit off. Now, Putin is trying to bring it back, but it's not the same thing. It's not a hereditary line.
They do have a mixture there. So I'm told that a lot of the royal class actually integrated into the administration into Russia. So they became the administrative class. They became the people who told people what they could do. And they were able to do the mix there of both royal, hereditary, and meritocracy, which seems like a good modern idea. But nevertheless, it's still, if you were a moneyed person, you'd land up getting a good government job and you basically run things, even within the communist world. But
that might have been just to make it easier for them to take over. There's like psychological reasons why they would do that rather than monarchical reasons. But I want to say, like, as an American and as a creative person and as an individualist type person, the whole idea that somebody's born to be some kind of ruling over us is such fucking bullshit. I hate it. It is anathema to everything that I feel in my bones. And yet it is ingrained in all the literature, going back to literally the dawn of literature, because the first thing that people wrote down was, this is the son of Tralala, who was the son of the Ga, who's the king of the assholes. That's it. Person begat that person, begat this jerk. There's 6 oxen, and it's just bullshit. And you look at these monarchies, man. Yeah, they have money, but they're inbred as fuck. They are inbred. Google Charles II of Spain, everybody, when this is done. Look at a picture of this is done. Of a possible, I think it was, 64, if I'm doing the math right? He should have 64 different individuals in his, genetic forebearers, and of a possible 64 spots, there was 20 people. So he had webbed feet. He was such a fucking mess, this guy. That ended the Habsburg rule in Spain. Okay. Then the other Habsburgs were inbred. So they had that big Habsburg jaw, which is, this happens when there's inbreeding, recessive weird shit happens because that isn't supposed to come out, because dominant genes override it, but 2 recessive genes from inbred comes out, right? That's why all these royals have hemophilia. We had a situation in Russia where Queen Victoria was a carrier of hemophilia and gave it to every goddamn family ruling, royal family in Europe, just about. Right. Okay. And it came out where Nicholas II of Russia's son, Alexei, the only boy, because God forbid that one of the women should be in charge, even though the women in Russia historically who have been in charge have been much better than the men.
Yeah, that Catherine.
Fact, okay,
she was good.
And Elizabeth was also anyway. Right. So this kid had hemophilia, and they didn't know what to do, because every time he stubbed his toe, oh no, he's going to bleed to death, and that's why Rasputin showed up, this 7-foot tall weird mystic guy, because for all the whatever about him and for some reason, he was able to help the kid's hemophilia and stop the bleeding, and nobody else could do it. This isn't crazy. This sounds like a. I
didn't know that. I didn't know that about it.
No, it's true.
Really interesting.
That's why they kept this asshole around. So you have a thing where this sickly kid who's inbred and therefore there's a problem that he shouldn't have, okay, has to be treated by this 7-foot-tall weirdo mystic who's moved into the goddamn palace because Nicholas II, who was first cousins with the goddamn King of England, who he was at war with, decided that because he was the Tsar, he was a better general than all the generals, and completely fucked up World War I so badly for Russia that the Bolsheviks took over and just were like, all right, we're done. We got to end this shit.
Because of hemophilia.
That was brilliant. I'm sorry. That was
the Weird History of the World by Greg Olear.
And everyone's here like, it's a royal. Oh, is it going to be William? Is it going to be the kid of the Dada? And these people are all German anyway. They're not even really
Why
British.
Are they German?
Oh my God.
The Romanov, Catherine came over there from Germany, killed her actual Romanov husband, and had kids with God knows who. So none of the Romanovs are even Romanovs anymore, probably. And the whole thing is crazy.
Because they're not really British, right? I mean, they're sort of like they're
good von sex. They're Germans. That's why they were okay with the Nazis. But Edward the Eighth, okay, who was king for like a week and a half. Before he decided to abdicate the throne to marry the twice divorced American Wallace Simpson, a Nazi spy was he fucking the Germans, whatever, Van Ribbentrop. The Germans wanted to get that guy to install him on the throne during the Second World War, thinking that, because he's the monarch, he would then ally with Germany and neutralize Britain as a threat. And this was such a serious thing that they sent him to like Bermuda during the war. And FDR put dudes on him. FDR sent people to Bermuda to keep an eye on this stupid asshole with his twice divorced American wife.
So this was only like within the last 100 years. We're talking about recent history.
40s.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's still, that was so powerful then.
If this guy decided not to abdicate to marry this Maria Butina of her time, Wallace Simpson, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth would not be queen because she's the whatever. Anyway, the whole thing is crazy.
But they really are more powerful than we realize. They really are.
You're the father of this person and the dada of that person. At least in America, we try to have monarchy. We like it. We like the idea of dynasties. Oh, George W. Bush must be because his father is a Bush, and now we have this George Prescott Bush. We like this shit. But at the end of the day, here the name helps, but you have to be good at what you do at least a little bit, or else what happens is you wind up like Matt Gaetz.
Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.